Intro music. Did you know that one ordinary woman became God's extraordinary instrument to save an entire nation? This is the story of Esther, a tale of courage, divine purpose, and unwavering faith that has the power to inspire us today. So grab a seat, because what you're about to hear might just change your perspective on challenges you face. This is the story of Esther. Soft strings playing. Hundreds of years ago, in the lands of Persia, there was a mighty king named Ahasuerus, though some know him as King Xerxes. He ruled over 127 provinces stretching from India to Ethiopia. But our story doesn't start with him. It begins with a young Jewish girl named Hadassah, known to most of us as Esther. Imagine her life, an orphan raised by her older cousin Mordecai in the bustling city of Susa. Esther, with her dark skin glowing under the desert sun, lived quietly, her days filled with the simple routines of a faithful Jewish household. One day, everything changed. King Ahasuerus held a grand banquet that lasted 180 days, celebrating the grandeur of his kingdom. At its end, he summoned Queen Vashti to show her beauty to the guests, for she was known far and wide for her stunning elegance. But Vashti refused. She defied the king's order, an act unheard of in those times. Furious and humiliated, the king sought counsel. His advisors suggested something radical: remove Vashti from her position and find a new queen. Here is where Esther's world turned upside down. A royal decree spread across the king's provinces, calling for the most beautiful young women to be brought to the palace. Esther, though hesitant, was chosen to be among them. Mordecai advised her to keep her Jewish identity a secret, sensing the political dangers that lay hidden in the court of Persia. Months passed as Esther underwent beauty treatments, her striking features enhanced by the oils and perfumes of the palace. But it wasn't just her appearance that captured the king's attention. It was her grace, humility, and the favor of God that rested upon her. When the time came, King Ahasuerus placed the crown upon Esther's head, crowning her the new queen of Persia. It was a pivotal moment orchestrated not by chance, but by divine providence. Now, while Esther adjusted to life as queen, intrigue brewed in the shadows. Mordecai, who often sat at the palace gates to keep an eye on Esther, overheard a plot to assassinate the king. He quickly informed Esther, who told the king in Mordecai's name. The plot was stopped, and Mordecai's loyalty was recorded in the king's chronicles. But little did anyone know that this act would echo throughout the story. Now comes the part of the story where the villain steps in: Haman, a high-ranking official in King Ahasuerus' court. Haman was a man of great pride but also great prejudice. He despised the Jews, particularly Mordecai, who refused to bow down to him. Haman's pride wasn't just bruised, it was enraged. In his bitterness, he hatched an evil plan: to wipe out all the Jews in the kingdom. Soft, ominous music begins. With sinister cunning, Haman convinced the king to endorse a decree that on a single day, all Jews, young and old, would be annihilated. The decree sent shockwaves through the Jewish community. Mourning filled the air as robes were replaced with sackcloth, and ashes symbolized their grief. Mordecai pleaded with Esther to intervene, but let's not forget, approaching the king without being summoned was a death sentence, even for the queen. Esther faced a terrifying choice: risk her own life or stay silent and watch her people perish. In that pivotal moment, Mordecai said these famous words: "And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" Esther, upon hearing this, knew she could not run from her divine purpose. Her faith and courage ignited, and she instructed Mordecai to gather all the Jews in Susa to fast and pray for 3 days. She declared, "If I perish, I perish." Upbeat, hopeful music swells. On the 3rd day, Esther dressed in her finest royal robes, her heart pounding with each step into the throne room. The king, upon seeing her, extended his golden scepter, sparing her life. Esther invited the king and Haman to a banquet, a strategic move rather than an emotional reaction. At the first banquet, she did not reveal her request but invited them to another gathering the next day. Her patience and wisdom were God's guidance at work. That night, an unusual thing happened. The king could not sleep. In search of distraction, he ordered the royal chronicles to be read to him and was reminded of Mordecai's act of loyalty. Realizing Mordecai had never been honored, the king asked Haman the next morning how to recognize a man the king wished to honor. Assuming the king meant him, Haman outlined an elaborate celebration, and to his horror, the king instructed him to carry out those honors for Mordecai. Can you imagine Haman's humiliation as he paraded Mordecai through the streets? Climactic, dramatic music. At the second banquet, Esther revealed her true identity to the king and exposed Haman's plot. "If I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it pleases the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request," she said. King Ahasuerus, enraged by Haman's treachery, ordered him to be executed on the gallows Haman had prepared for Mordecai. But the story doesn't end there. Esther and Mordecai petitioned the king to reverse the decree against the Jews. Though the original decree could not be revoked, the king issued a new one allowing the Jews to defend themselves. On the day their enemies planned to annihilate them, the tables turned, and the Jews emerged victorious. In the aftermath, Mordecai was elevated to a position of power next to the king, and the Jewish people celebrated their deliverance with feasting and gladness. This celebration became known as Purim, a festival still observed by Jews around the world today to remember God's faithfulness. Soft, reflective music. So what can we learn from Esther's story? First, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting in faith despite it. Esther had every reason to shrink back, but her trust in God gave her the strength to step forward. Second, we see the evidence of divine providence, God placing Esther right where she needed to be well before the crisis arose. And finally, this story reminds us that our choices matter. Like Esther, we all face moments where we must decide whether to stand for what is right, even at great personal cost. As you go through life, remember this: you might be where you are today not by accident, but for a divine purpose. History shows us that one voice, submitted to God's will, can change the world. If Esther's story teaches anything, it's to trust in God's plan, even when we don't see the full picture. Outro music plays. Thank you for listening to this episode in our Bible series. Subscribe for more stories of faith, courage, and divine purpose. Until next time, stay inspired. Fade out.